Now, to earn the best money in old school RuneScape, usually you have to kill a boss. Now, that can be kind of intimidating to get into because some of them are very complex and require lots of practice to kill effectively. But honestly, that is just reserved for a select few bosses. Most of them can be killed pretty easily and still for incredible money per hour and significantly better than most skilling methods. So today I'm going to be going over 15 bosses that you can try to kill that honestly are not that difficult once you practice a bit and can earn you a couple million GP per hour or even up to 5, 6, 7 mil per hour, and they're not that hard. So we're separating difficulty into two main categories: mechanical complexity and requirements. We're going to start from the lowest and get to the more complex of these bosses. Now in 2025, I still think Barrows is probably one of the easiest bosses in the game, and it's even easier thanks to the magic rebalance. I would say Barrows is a difficulty of like a 1 out of 10, and requirements maybe a 2 out of 10. Nowadays you only need one thing, and that is a wind spell. And that's because of the new elemental weakness that the Barrows brothers have to air spells. Once you get to 60 magic, you can comfortably kill all of the Barrows brothers, including Aram, with wind spells. So it's actually so easy now, you don't even have to gear switch or anything. To get the gear to do this, you'd need at most 5 to 10 mil for a set of Arams. Now this is obviously one of the easiest bosses, so you're not going to be rewarded that much. Right now you can make maybe 750k per hour, but still a great introduction to bossing, and you can still make some early game money with it. Now next up here we have the Dagannoth Kings, and specifically Dagannoth Rex. Dagannoth Rex drops the most valuable ring right now, being the Berserker ring, and is by far the easiest Dagannoth to kill. The difficulty of this method is like a 2 out of 10, requirements maybe a 2 out of 10 as well. To kill Dagannoth Rex, you really only need a couple things. You need Ivan's Blast, maybe. You just need some sort of mage weapon. Ivan's Blast is perfectly fine. So really 50 magic, some defense levels as well, and some tanky gear is all you'll need. Because Dagannoth Rex has such low magic defense, you can literally wear Torreg's top and bottom, a granite shield, and you'll still be incredibly accurate. Honestly, probably the most difficult part of this method is just getting to the Dagannoth Kings and getting into position. This will require you to run all the way through the Waterbird dungeon, and getting it so only Dagannoth Rex attacks you can be a little tricky, as you need to go down the ladder, check if the other two Dagannoths have aggroed you. If not, you skirt around the edge, attack Dagannoth Rex from the far wall, and then you can get them stuck in a multitude of places to save spot them. Really, you'll just need some prayer potions, super anti-poisons, and a whole bunch of food. Once you get the hang of getting here though, it's such an easy method and can earn you over a mil per hour while you're hunting the Berserker ring. So next up here, hear me out. We have the Coliseum, but only wave 1 farming. But this is a surprisingly easy and low requirement moneymaker, at least in the realm of bossing. I would say this is probably a 2 to 10 difficulty method and maybe a 3 to 10 for requirements. Unlocking Varlamore has 0 requirements, and to do this effectively you only really need 75 in your melee combat stats. So you don't actually need that much money either, maybe 5 mil to 30 mil at most in gear cost. Most of that taken up by the Din's Bulwark once you can afford it. Now farming just the first wave of the Coliseum is so profitable because you get a guaranteed 80 splinters for every completion, and you can do a completion in like 30 seconds once you know what you're doing. It's pretty easy, honestly. You just have to put on Protect from Mage and your highest offensive prayer, run in with the Din's Bulwark, dump the specs on the Major once the Fremenics are nearby, and then just kill anything else that's alive. You will take some damage, but you almost never die. And for every completion, you're getting 50k in profit. It's honestly dead simple. And you can actually earn a lot of money doing this, about 1.5 mil to 2.5 mil an hour. It's incredibly boring, not gonna lie about that, but a great way to get into some combat moneymakers at a very low difficulty level. Okay, next up here we have the newest boss added, actually, the Royal Titans. The Royal Titans are a great new boss for learning specifically gear switching, although you can simplify it quite a lot. The difficulty of the content is maybe a 3 out of 10 and maybe a 3 out of 10 for requirements as well. There's a ton of variety of weapons you can use here, but really any melee and range switch will work. I've killed the Titans with a Dragon Scimitar and a Rune Crossbow. I've killed it with a Noxious Halberd and a Blowpipe. Obviously, you could even kill it with a Scythe, that would be more effective, but realistically, you can effectively kill the Royal Titans with maybe 15 mil to 50 mil worth of gear. Now to kill them, I would recommend probably having 75 in all of your combat stats, including magic, as you'll need magic to get rid of the elementals that spawn and get rid of the flame and ice walls. You'll need range to attack the Titans when they go a few tiles away, and primarily you'll be dealing most of the damage with melee, so that's the most important combat stat to have at a high level. Now the profitability of this boss comes mostly from the Twin Flame Staff unique, which is worth about 5 mil each right now. Plus there's a ton of semi-valuable basic loot as well. But if you're killing it reasonably effectively, I think you can get about 2 mil per hour right now. That might go down over time, but they're honestly an amazing mid-game boss to make some early game money right now. Now coming up next here, we have the Perilous Moons, which is the new and improved barrows. Most bosses in RuneScape require a different assortment of food, potions, and supplies to kill. You could grab these all individually, or you could just order a box from today's video sponsor, HelloFresh, and you'll get everything you need to make an amazing home-cooked meal. The reason I like HelloFresh so much is it gives you the satisfaction of cooking, but with none of the stress of wasted food, or me disassociated in the grocery store not knowing what to buy. Anyone could cook when it's as simple as HelloFresh makes it, and none of your ingredients will ever go to waste as they send you the precise amount for each meal. And best of all, it arrives right at your doorstep. Each week, HelloFresh has a massive selection of over 50 meals to choose from. They have vegan meals, vegetarian, and calorie smart, so regardless of your dietary restrictions, there is something there for everyone. It's honestly an amazing service, and I would highly recommend trying it out, as they are currently offering a sick deal, which is breakfast for life. Simply use the link in my description or use my code FLIPFEB10 to receive 10 free meals and free breakfast for life while your subscription is active, if you're in the US. The link and code are valid in all countries, and the respective local discount will apply. And once again, a massive thank you to HelloFresh for supporting me and sponsoring today's video. Perilous Moons is at a similar difficulty to the Royal Titans, but is more profitable due to just how expensive mainly Blood Moon is right now, but also Blue Moon is very expensive. It's kind of like doing a Barrows run, but you have a chance of getting a 12 mil item instead of like a 4 mil item. The boss fight requires very minimal gear switching and mostly is focused on movement, but you can get the hang of it relatively quickly. Most of the mechanics aren't very punishing, and to kill the Perilous Moons you really only need about 75 in your melee combat stats. Once again, there is a huge variety of gear that you could use here. The Blood Moon armor with the dual mecha huetels are particularly strong, but a good alternative is just wearing a tank top and bottom from Barrows. Each of the Perilous Moons bosses has a ramping damage mechanic, which incentivizes you to bring tankier equipment, which generally is pretty cheap. You can pretty effectively kill the moons with 20 to 50 mil in gear, and at the current prices you can get upwards of even 3 mil an hour here. It's honestly an incredible way to make money in the mid game, and truly is not that difficult. Okay, next up here we have the Giant Mole, which only makes it higher in the list because it has kind of an innate higher requirement. Probably easier than Barrows, honestly, at 1 out of 10 difficulty. But the requirements are kind of higher because to realistically do this you need the Falador Hard Diary, which has a whole host of skill requirements including 72 Slayer, 70 Prayer, 60 Mining, so it does add up. But once you get it, actually killing the mole is so easy. A popular method is simply using Darox and using a rock cake to get down to 1 HP, and just smacking the mole. As soon as he digs, you just run after him, kill him, and repeat. Darox is particularly effective because the mole has a chance of digging each time you hit him, so Darox is a slow, high-hitting weapon, so he should run away less. At best, you're probably making about 1 mil per hour with the Giant Mole, but it's super easy, reasonably low effort, and only requires maybe about 10 mil in gear to kill it effectively. So next up here we have Calvar'ion. Calvar'ion is actually an incredible boss for people on a budget in particular, and it's honestly not that difficult. Calvar'ion is probably a difficulty 3 boss with a requirement of 3 as well. The only real drawback is it's in the wilderness, so maybe let's bump that up to a 4 to 10 difficulty just because there's some variance with the wilderness. Calvar'ion is a very simple boss encounter and can be done entirely with melee. The gear cost is very low, in fact you're actually incentivized to lower it as much as possible because you are in the wilderness. But literally the best in slot weapon here is the Ursine Chain Mace, which is only a 7 mil weapon. That in combination with the Salve Amulet allows lower level and not very rich players to hit a very high GP per hour. Now Calvar'ion does have unique drops, that being the Voidwaker Blade and the Ring of the Gods, but mostly your profits are going to be coming from the consistent resource and alchemical drops, so it's actually a pretty consistent moneymaker nowadays. So if you have a Dragon Mace, you have a Salve Amulet, you can do Calvar'ion, I would give it a try. Now next up here we have one of my favorite bosses, and that is Commander Zilyana. Killing Saradomin is very simple, but it does start getting into the realm of having higher requirements. The difficulty of the boss fight is maybe a 2 out of 10, as realistically, you just run around in circles attacking the boss, so it's not that hard. Killing Zilyana does have higher requirements, requiring 70 agility just to enter their lair, and probably realistically 85 ranged to start killing it effectively. Now, kiting Zilyana is way easier than any of the other God Wars dungeon bosses. You can do it with a crossbow or a bow of Ferdinand, and pretty much you just attack her a couple times per side, making sure you run fully into the corners. Bonus points would be to envenom the minions, so you don't have to deal with them for as long after the kill, but that's not even strictly required. Now, Zilyana is one of the first bosses where your gear cost is starting to inflate a bit. You can kill Zilyana with a dragon crossbow and enchanted bolts, but it is significantly slower than using a bow of Ferdinand. With a Bofa, you can get about 4 mil per hour, but with a crossbow setup, it's like half of that. So it really does start to make a pretty big difference, but either way, incredibly simple to kill, and I recommend trying her out. Okay, so next up here we have Zalcano. Now I know this is a skilling boss, but I thought I'd throw it in here for some variety, and because Zalcano has been recently changed. Now, killing Zalcano, very simple, like a 2 out of 10, but it does have some pretty steep requirements, mainly being Song of the Elves and 70 mining. Now, what they changed about Zalcano recently is that you can opt to choose experience or loot. And on top of that, they have made it so there's no longer forced amount of downs for Zalcano, which has drastically sped up the kill, allowing larger groups to kill Zalcano upwards of 40 times per hour. Now, I would highly recommend picking the experience setting, and there's a reason for that. Even if you sacrifice your loot, you're only getting rid of the resources, the runes, and the bars and whatnot, which does add up to be a bit, but even if you pick experience, you're still going to be getting the crystal shards and the chance at the crystal tool seed, which is where the majority of the money comes from anyway. So if you want to make some money and train mining, I would highly recommend trying Zalcano on the experience setting, as you can still make upwards of 2.5 mil per hour while training mining, and this requires like no money to get started, maybe a mil in gear for a dragon pickaxe and some stamina potions. Very simple. Okay, so next up here we have demonic gorillas, and in 2025, demonic gorillas are actually insane money. Now these can be a bit difficult to get the hang of, and do have somewhat high requirements, requiring Monkey Madness 2, and probably 80 or 85 in your melee and range stats. But thanks to how expensive Zenyte shards are right now, you can earn 4 to 5 mil per hour with demonic gorillas. Now demonic gorillas can be done on a Slayer task, and I would highly recommend it. Black Demon tasks are massive, pretty common, and you will get tired of doing these pretty quickly, so you might as well do them on task. The nice thing about demonic gorillas is the best in slot weapon here are the synapse weapons, being Emberlight and the Scorching Bow or the Purging Staff. This means you don't need a sight, you don't need a twisted bow to get the best in slot rates. The gear cost is expensive, but you can get pretty much a best in slot setup for like 150 mil or something. But can be done simply with an arc light as well, which is a free quest item. Now, demonic gorillas do require you to gear switch often, so you have to bring 2 combat styles, and you want to minimize how big of a switch you need to make, so you'll be having to do it a lot. 2 or 3 items at the most is what I would recommend for the majority of people, otherwise your hands are going to hurt and you're going to really hate killing these things. But once you get used to demonic gorillas, you can make up to 5 mil an hour right now, so they're incredible money. Next up here we have Vorkath. Vorkath is another PvM encounter that is way more profitable this year, thanks to the price of superior dragon bones. Killing Vorkath is quite easy, maybe only at 3 to 10 difficulty, but has reasonably steep requirements requiring Dragon Slayer 2 and probably 80 in melee or range to start killing them effectively. Vorkath is nice because getting a best in slot setup is much cheaper than some other bosses. You're able to use a salve amulet here, which completely nullifies the need to have a Slayer helm or even be on a Slayer task. So you can get nearly a best in slot setup here for about 100 mil, just a Dragon Underlands, a salve amulet, and some strength boosting gear. You can get the hang of killing Vorkath in just a couple of kills. Probably the most difficult part of the entire fight is just learning the Wook's Walk with either a lance, a blowpipe, or a Dragon Hunter crossbow. Personally, I like killing Vorkath with melee, as your supply cost is less and it's just as good as killing it with a Dragon Hunter crossbow. And right now you can get 4 to 5 mil per hour killing Vorkath, which is insanely good, and it's a lot lower intensity than other methods that are this profitable. Now we can't talk about Vorkath without talking about Zulrah. Zulrah is kind of the inverse. It's more difficult than Vorkath, but has lower requirements. Your first Zulrah kill will test you a fair bit, but you can access Zulrah just after the completion of Regicide, which is a much easier quest to do, and maybe 75 ranged magic for a trident and a blowpipe. Now the amount of kills you can get per hour at Zulrah varies so much. When you're learning and with lesser gear, you might only be getting 10 or 15 kills an hour, but people can get upwards of 40 kills per hour at this boss. So your gear and skill really can be pushed to the limit here. Realistically though, with a blowpipe and trident, you're probably getting around 20 kills per hour, which means your profit is going to be maybe capped at about 3 mil per hour. This might actually be the most difficult mechanical boss on this list, which I think just puts into perspective that anyone can really do any of these moneymakers if they practice a little bit. Zulrah does require movement, does require gear switching, does require remembering rotations, and can be daunting to learn at first, but if you can learn Zulrah, then you can learn any of the other methods on this list easily. So for that alone, I think it's worth learning. Okay, next up here we have my favorite method, Tormented Demons. Now, Tormented Demons I think are actually easier to kill than Demonic Gorillas, but I'm putting them at the same difficulty simply because there's a lot of mechanics to Tormented Demons that aren't maybe as obvious at a glance. The requirements to kill Tormented Demons are a bit higher as well. You need to finish Wild Gothic Sleeps, and you probably need around 85 in ranged, melee, or magic. Similar to Demonic Gorillas, you need 2 combat styles to switch between. Now there's no secret these are my favorite because they're insane money, with Tormented Synapses being nearly 50 mil each. And to get the best in slot setup here is way cheaper, because all you need is 2 of either Emberlight, a Scorching Bow, or a Purging Staff, which will run you about 100 mil for both weapons, and will allow you to make up to 5 to 7 mil per hour killing Tormented Demons. Now they can be done on a greater demon task, and I would highly recommend it. They're common tasks and definitely worth it. Tormented Demons have a complex array of mechanics to them, but you can ignore a lot of them when you're starting out, and kill them very similar to how you'd kill Demonic Gorillas, except they're easier. You don't have to gear switch as often, you don't have to switch your own prayers often. Once you get comfortable killing them, you can take advantage of their punish mechanic, which allows you to smack them with a slow, high-hitting weapon. And at certain points of the fight, you have 100% accuracy as well, so you can take advantage of Abyssal Dagger specs, which are really effective, Blowpipe, which you can just shred through them. There's too many mechanics here to list, but there are ways to really speed up kills here, which can help you push up to the 7 mil per hour range right now, which is insanity. Now next up here we have Cerberus. Slayer bosses are usually simple compared to others, and Cerberus is no different. Being a pretty simple fight, all things considered, maybe a 3 out of 10 difficulty, but having one of the highest requirements of anything on this list is why it's so far down. Cerberus requires 91 Slayer to kill it all, so you want to have access to Cerberus for a good period of time. But once you've unlocked Cerberus, definitely still one of my favorite moneymakers in 2025. This is mainly due to the fact that the Cerberus crystals have actually exploded in value, in speculation for a new update. Eternal crystals are 8 mil each, primordials are still expensive, and smoldering stones are a nice reward as well. Cerberus also has the benefit of being able to be killed with Arclight or Emberlight, which is a much more cost-effective weapon than requiring a scythe to get the best in slot rates. So great for someone who's on a budget. You can kill Cerberus in a full melee setup, and really only has one difficult mechanic, which is the ghosts, requiring you to quickly flick through your prayers, and even if you do it correctly, it drains your prayers. So having a Spectral Spirit Shield is nice, but not required at all, just saves you a bit in prayer potions. Right now you can make actually 4 mil an hour with Cerberus, which is pretty good considering how easy this boss really is, and it gives you Slayer experience as well, so it's a pretty solid package. I'd try it out once you get the level. And finally, we have the last easy boss on this list being Araxxor. Araxxor is a step up in difficulty from Cerberus, but not by that much. But once again, has an incredibly high requirement of 92 Slayer. But in 2025, Araxxor is by far the most profitable Slayer boss and more relaxing than something like the Chemical Hydra. To kill Araxxor, you really just need 80, 90 in your melee stats, and can be done pretty effectively with a bludgeon, or even a Vigorous Chain Mace works perfectly fine. Now Araxxor is by far my favorite Slayer boss, because right now you can get 5 or 6 mil an hour killing it, and the mechanics really are not that hard or punishing either. Now similar to Cerberus, this does need to be done on an Araxxite Slayer task, but once you get one, you'll be there for like an entire week, so it's not that big a deal honestly. Now Araxxor is a monster that does benefit with mega rares, so using a scythe here is significantly better than a bludgeon, but even on budget, Araxxor is still probably 4 or 5 mil an hour, thanks to just how expensive the Rancor and the Noxious Halberd is right now. It might always be this way, so if you have access to this monster, I would definitely grind out some Araxxor kills. Super easy and profitable. Anyway guys, that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching as always, and I will see you next time.